Welcome, everyone. My name is Marcin. I'm one of the strategists here at Tealium. So I'm going to start this talk about a certain subject that's close to my heart as well. And then we're going to go through all the different presentations for the next 90 minutes. So I'm going to talk to you about something slightly different in terms of data collection. We're going to talk about bins and recycling and all that stuff. On one of my journeys throughout the US, I was driving through Red Forest in California, and absolutely beautiful drive. You can see all the big trees and everything, but also what you can see is those different bins littering the side of the road where all the different properties have their own drives. And I thought, well, this is going to be a great start to this talk about the data collection. So not necessarily the data collection, but also to the recycling collection. And you might think, well, what is he talking about? Absolute rubbish, isn't it? Well, it is. But the same as with data, we can monetize the data. We can see the value of the data. The same, the councils collect the recycling for their own benefit as well. So what's the strategy of monetizing our data? Okay, just like my grandmother used to say, there's gold in every rubbish. There's gold in every junk. And also she was a hoarder, but that's another story. How can we monetize this based on this strategy? So you know that you can collect your data, rubbish, or recycling to different bins. But councils, in majority of the towns, are very smart. They will only want to collect certain types of recycling. They don't allow you to throw newspapers. They only want to clean cardboard. They don't allow you to collect some bubble wraps, but they only allow you to collect some plastic containers. And similarly with glass, they want to collect glass and not metal cans. And why is that? Simply because they can monetize on it. They can just package up and ship it to the third party and collect some money out of it. Everything else is dumped into the landfill. So the strategy here is very simple. Collect as much as possible and get a price for it. Collect different items which are more valuable and get a better price for it. But if any of those is contaminated with at least one item that's not allowable, then the whole shipment fails. Yeah, this is very similar to what we collect as data. We can collect some email addresses, but if one of those email addresses is malformatted, then the whole payload is wrong. If we collect some date of birth or phone numbers and they're not properly formatted, it's the same for us. If we just ship it directly to the third party, it might be completely rejected. That means that we also have to increase the numbers of those bins. Bin for an email from the newsletter, bin for an email from the login page, and so on. And that completely litters all our efforts and all our streets. Typical UK street, isn't it? All the different bins for different purposes. But there's always something better. Where is that located? Yes, always. They figure out that they can provide municipal bins, big bins, for all these different types of recycling. So they still categorize the recycling, but they don't provide you single bins. They just provide you a collective bins for the whole street. And the streets look much nicer, isn't it? So one of my favorite quotes of recent days is that amateurs talk about strategy. That comes from a strategist to you. Professionals talk about logistics. So let's explore the logistics of it. So if we allow everyone to recycle pretty much everything, and we do something with that recycling afterwards, then we probably can maximize our profits. The same is with the collection bins like so. Allow everyone to collect any type of recycling, and then let's decide on a conveyor belt what we need and at which time. That's called post-processing. We can monetize on what we have at the right time that we collect. And similarly, we can collect all of this rubbish, put it on a conveyor belt, hold it for the better price or a better supplier, and sell it with a profit. What's not needed, we can then decide ourselves what's not needed, what's contaminated, without losing all those margins. I studied chemistry back in 20 years ago, and I did some tests with my fellow team players. We allow our students to collect for 3 weeks from their student housing, all in one bin, and then processing this afterwards. And for the next 3 weeks, we told them to recycle according to them what we can allow them or not. The results were staggering that we could monetize more on that rubbish if we process it ourselves versus them collecting it into separate bins. And why is that so? Because we ease the use of the system to the end user. So those students didn't have to think about what they throwing away. They were just collecting everything. We provided the greatest standardization of that rubbish, and we allow for flexible processing. So if we didn't have means of selling this somewhere else, we could withhold it and ship it somewhere else or to a different supplier. Therefore, we had higher returns.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Welcome to the data collection workshop from my end as well. And of course, thank you for joining us at Digital Velocity. I'm Bart Gormans, solution consultant, 7 years at Tealium in the meantime, and I was asked to put a bit more focus on the functionalities that we offer in Tealium to improve or optimize your data collection. Just a question, like, who is collecting data from web nowadays with Tealium already? That should be a lot of people. Who's already collecting data from mobile apps, iOS, Android? Who's already collecting data from the data warehouse? Snowflake, Redshift, Databricks. I mean, the point why I'm bringing this up, like what Martian actually brought up in terms of data rubbish collection, it's not so different from data collection. You need to make sure that from all these points where data comes into existence or where maybe data exists, you have the functionalities and, of course, the mechanics in Tealium to collect that data. So for those already familiar with Tealium, we come from the website world, like tag management. That's where you activate data with pixels and JavaScript. But in the meantime, we've evolved in a full-blown data pipeline that activates event-level and, of course, customer-level data. It's always a bit like more going into the orchestration already, what I'm going to do with that data, especially in the customer data space. But for me, personally, it's also very valid in the data collection logistic chain. You want to sometimes turn event-level data into customer profiles. So I'm going to touch upon these topics more in detail here. But let's start with the beginning. Everyone is familiar with the web SDKs and the mobile SDKs. If you're not familiar with them, please have a look into them. We have a Genius bar there where we can go into more detail in the next 1.5 days still. But if you have something like a data warehouse, data cloud, AI cloud, there's different names nowadays. We see these major players like Databricks, Snowflake, AWS, Redshift, and Google BigQuery, of course, all over the place. And they're being adopted. They're replacing all these legacy systems that are used in all these enterprise companies. And that's very valid. That's very valuable that we added there now also this capability to get data from these data sources, not only wait until someone pushes that as a CSV file or as an API call. We can still do that, of course. There's like valid approaches for each use case, but having that capability in Tealium to extract data from your data warehouse, I think that's always worth looking into, especially if that data warehouse, that data cloud is being used to enrich data with your own AI algorithms and models. Once data comes in, regardless if it's coming from the website or mobile, always consider the privacy aspect and, of course, the purpose for which you're collecting data. If you want to activate data, and I know for the people in the back it's hard to see the user interface screenshots I made here. Again, Genius Bar allows you to dive into details there. But what I'm showing here is these integrations that we have with these consent management platforms that we also see all over these website properties nowadays. They are going to make sure that every piece of consent is being collected in real time and added to that data layer. And of course, in Tealium, you can use that to control where data nowadays streams to. So regardless, is it for analytics, for performance marketing, is it for marketing automation or data science, getting data back to your data warehouse, always consider consent and the purpose for which you're collecting data. So consent orchestration is one of these features that I sometimes see that people are not really aware of. It's a very valuable control mechanism to make sure that you're not activating data all over the place. In the whole data collection chain, standardization of that data language, it all starts with the data layer. I've seen in practice that websites usually have a different data language compared to mobile apps, and sometimes Android and iOS speak a different language. We always recommend define your data layer as a unified language that you use across the business. But of course, the reality is sometimes different, and then being able to transform that data client-side with extensions, but server-side with functions nowadays. That's what these screenshots are showing. And then also on the attribute level, making sure that a first dash name and a first underscore name and an F name, wherever it comes from, can be consolidated in one attribute, with the main reason that you don't have to do that downstream and figure out which attribute comes from which data source. One of the main aims of Tealium is to make sure that all your stakeholders are speaking the same data language, including the people that configure Tealium in terms of data streams. For those who are using Tealium not only for event data collection or event activation, but also turn that into visitor profiles, know that it's not simply about storing data on a visitor profile in Tealium, right? Turning these events that we ingest in real time or in batch from a data warehouse into a holistic customer profile. All these attributes that we offer there on the visit and the visitor level allows you to consolidate behavior on a customer profile level. So it's obvious that you want to store first name, last name, email address, and all this demographic data that you collect about customers, but then also using those interactions. If someone purchases 3 times, that you have this lifetime values live and up to date in Tealium before you're activating that downstream. So you don't have to figure out in your marketing automation tool who is a heavy value customer and so on. So you can define all that logic centrally. So all these enrichments that we can do on the numeric level, but also on the string and the array level, tallies, for those who are familiar with these concepts, I always invite them to dive deep into the use cases that you can realize with them. And of course, our speakers today will dive deeper in use cases as well. Observing the data, making sure that the data is qualified. There's different mechanisms in Tealium with the functions that I already mentioned, but the event specifications and the live events feed are still valuable to make sure that if data pours into the system, that you can make sure that the data is qualified in a correct way, but also disqualified in a correct way. So these different color schemes that you can then use on the live event is still valuable, especially in onboarding phases. Is that website data according to the standards that we need it to be, or is it mobile app data according to the standards, to the data contract that it needs to be? When you decide you want to send data off, because we don't want to be, let's say, the final destination of data, we want to make sure that you can activate the data in real time. And real time, just a reminder, that means within 200 milliseconds after the point of collection. So having that flexibility with event feeds and all these rules that you can define there, and of course the audience rules, you have full control of where you're going to send data off. It comes later in the data collections pipeline, but if you're collecting data for a certain purpose, it's important that you put some thoughts in, like, how am I going to control the data stream that is going to be sent to a certain destination. Last but not least, our connector marketplace. I like to call it the connector catalog because we do not charge per connector. We just offer them there out of the box. And a lot of our customers, they start with the performance marketing integrations or the marketing automation integrations, like getting that cart abandoner live. Florian will dive a bit deeper into that in a moment. But know that Tealium has heavily invested in these integrations with any kind of downstream system and APIs. We went to these data clouds, making sure that Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery is being supplied with real-time data as well. So having that connector catalog just at hand to activate data to any destination is very valuable. We recently added there we recently added there the language learning and the AI platforms to which you can actually send data to have it evaluated by AI. So if you have a business subscription on something like ChatGPT or something, or OpenAI, try it out. We have an offer here where we consult you how to activate data for AI purposes, and then of course getting something back from that AI model, like an enrichment, a sentiment score, whatever you want to do based upon real-time data. Last point I want to emphasize, controlling what piece of data you want to activate. It's sometimes not emphasized enough in my opinion, but the data mapping in the connector allows you to control what context of the customer profile and of course the event context from the page views from your website and mobile app hits you're sending down for downstream purposes. So making sure that not just the full event payload and the full customer payload goes to a downstream system. That's what we want to make sure that you can control that in the connector level. Having also the diagnostics at hand, so making sure that connectors operate well. For some various reasons, we always get like API errors, like the downstream systems are not always responding in real time, not to our expectations. That's why we have retry mechanisms. That's something that we never see at our competition. Making sure that the data that we ingest, if it cannot be delivered from the first attempt, it's delivered at least from the second, third, and fifth attempt. I mean, there will be a lockdown at some point, and if an API is not behaving well, but that's what we want also to visualize in all the diagnostics that come with the connector marketplace and the connector dashboard. So if anything of these functions sound a bit like abstract at the moment, again, feel free to drop by at the Genius Bar later on.
Hello, everyone. Happy you're attending the second slot. I would like to tell you a bit about how we brought Tealium CDP to the heart of our MarTech setup. Let me introduce myself. I'm Florian Schlüter. I'm product owner, customer data platform at STIHL for the last 5 years now. And I've been working for online-focused companies since I finished my studies well over 10 years ago. And thereof the last 9 years together with Tealium already. So I guess I have a bit of experience. As an introduction, I would like to tell you about how it took STIHL nearly 100 years to become from a dealer-only company to a direct-to-customer or direct-to-consumer company. We are celebrating our 100 years this year, so we're very proud and happy about that. And we were founded in 1926, and also our founder, Andreas Stihl, invented the first electric chainsaw in this year, which is considered to be the invention of the modern chainsaw nowadays. 4 years later, he also invented the first petrol chainsaw, which is maybe what we're most known for. You can consider this to be the first wireless chainsaw, basically. 40 years later, in 1971, and until today, which makes us very proud, we're the world's most sold chainsaw brand. So that's maybe what most people do know STIHL for, but still we're also selling well above 1,000 other products, enabling our consumer and professional customers working in the nature. So this is why this is also part of our claim for the 100-year celebrations, Built for Nature. In 2020, our products were sold in 160 plus countries by well above 5,500 dealers, and these were managed by 40 plus subsidiaries. In the same year, in March, we started our own B2C online shop. So you can see it almost took us 100 years to become a direct-to-consumer company. And only 1 year later, in May of 2021, we already implemented our CDP or started the development, which shows how important customer data is to STIHL and how important we take this also in the future. In 2024, we made a 5.3 billion euros of revenue. We have around 20,000 employees worldwide, and we are manufacturing in 8 countries. So let me tell you a bit about our marketing automation setup and how the vision versus the reality looks like, because the honest reality is in between. Before the CDP, we had a system of scattered tools. We used a legacy A/B testing tool, also legacy email marketing, because we came from a B2B environment, now facing a B2C environment with different requirements. We had no unified data activation, which means we weren't able to utilize offline and online data to power or retargeting, for example. You can imagine seeing on the last slide 5,500 and more dealers that are selling our products offline were not connected to our online marketing, so it was very hard to identify any sales that took place. Also, we couldn't use our online or offline data for website and email personalization, and we had no omni-channel intelligence, which means we couldn't do real product recommendations or advanced analytics use cases. That's where the vision is coming from. So it's based on a general framework of 4 points: flexibility, frequency, security, and scalability. You saw 40+ subsidiaries. They all want to be able to work with the tool in the future. And Tealium as the orchestration layer is in the center or in the heart of the setup, connected to modern tools that are able to utilize the data and keep track with our new requirements in terms of B2C. The honest reality lies between. Maybe you think there haven't been too many changes, but there are some compared to the vision. Maybe you can see in the lower end that we don't have a marketing journey tool anymore in here. That's based on our limited budget in the last years, where we didn't simply get the allowance to implement new tools that are expensive. Limited workforce capacities is also a topic that restrained us because we didn't simply have enough workforce to implement all of the tools or to build all the connections that we wanted to have. And lastly, limited technical features of existing tools that we were connecting. So always a good example is our CRM system. So we wanted to connect with them. And during the exploration, we found out they are not able to only send increments of data, but they would always send full customer profiles with each connection or with each synchronization. Obviously, that's not what we wanted. Maybe that's a bit wrong on the slide, but nowadays we are receiving the data from the analytics platform, which also has a connection and is able to provide that. So you can see we will always find another way to connect data. Talking about challenges and restraints, it always can be frustrating because you think you're running against walls and you're not at the point you want to be at. But looking at this, it actually makes me proud of what we already achieved together with Tealium. We still have a very functional system with features well above of what we were able to do before. And a big part of what we want to do is already done, and I'm looking forward to also achieve the rest. So how did we position the CDP in the center of our MarTech stack, and how were we able to come from scattered systems to one orchestration backbone? Actually, we have 3 strategic challenges. Thinking about Marcin's presentation, strategy is only for amateurs, but so maybe we need to consider ourselves as amateurs. But still, we have these 3. So the marketing automation strategy is the first one. That's where I'm located in the marketing automation team. Or challenge or strategy is to build use cases as fast as possible, as automated as possible, get them on the road, roll them out. The second part are the subsidiary strategies. So these are all our sales units. Most countries have their own sales unit. They are grown structures, sometimes older than 40 years. For example, the subsidiary in the US was founded in 1974. So you can imagine they don't want any changes. They want autonomy, and especially they don't want any additional effort that's coming from us because they also have limited workforce capacities. And the last strategy is the headquarters strategy, where all the internal stakeholders are located, so also the marketing automation team itself, which also includes paid media or email marketing. And they, of course, want a global setup. They want a high compliance. And you can see, you don't see many similarities between these three, but there's one thing that helps to get them all together, and that is revenue. They all want to maximize their revenue, and that's their #1 goal. So helping you to bring the tool to the countries or to the subsidiaries is always to make revenue your #1 KPI for all of your use cases. I would like to talk a bit about push to pull. So when we started, we tried to push our use cases, the CDP, the tool, to the subsidiaries, to all the other stakeholders. We tried to convince them. But you don't sell technology by PowerPoint, you sell it by value. So you need to develop use cases that generate demand. As I said, the challenge, push doesn't scale. If you don't have value behind your tool, the subsidiaries wouldn't understand it, they won't adopt it, and they won't be very happy about it. So what we did, we were working on one major use case that could help us to show the value of the CDP and to provide it to all the subsidiaries and to convince them to make the scale over to a pull approach. This trigger use case was in our case the cart abandonment use case. I know, I'm pretty sure every one of you knows the cart abandonment. Maybe every one of you has already implemented it, hopefully, because it's very valuable. But it's a very good use case for that because it's easy to understand, it shows clear impact, and it's very easy to roll out. So you can bring it to all the countries very quick. With this clear revenue impact that we had from our subsidiary Germany, this one was very motivated to work with us with the CDP. Also, it is one of our biggest markets, so you can imagine you will have a very big revenue impact. In our case, it was almost, it was enough to pay Tealium's license cost alone, so you can imagine this was a very successful use case for us. And with this use case, we went out to all the others. So we consider ourselves to be a Microsoft company by the IT department, so I have to use Copilot, I know, but Copilot would have said as the next slide, other subsidiaries asked for it to shift from push to pull, and here the story would end. But I can tell you it wasn't that easy. So even having this very successful use case in our hand and all the numbers that we could show to the other subsidiaries, we still needed to do a lot of communication, telling them about CDP at all, about the use case, about the value. And this took some time, and you still need to be resilient to talk to everyone again and again until they really understand and the pull effect starts. So that's where the flywheel effect starts. And basically that's when all the other subsidiaries saw the great value, they saw how it's helpful to them and how valuable their data really can be. With this in our backend, the CDP really become the backbone of our MarTech strategy. And we came from a bottom-down to, bottom-up demand that replaces now the top-down push. So the subsidiaries are now actively asking to get a CDP, and we have to manage the requests. Let me end my presentation with one other quote. I think it's clear to say you don't scale a CDP by pushing technology, you scale it by delivering value and make people or subsidiaries actively ask for it. Thank you.
So I've got a couple of questions about how the process goes, and this is my QBR really, but we'll see. So you talked a lot about pulling all the different data into a centralized system from all these different data sources. So my first question is about the data schema and how do you go about it? How have you designed the data schema? Have you designed the data structure? And how was that process really?
Yeah, actually, it's an ongoing process because when you're beginning working with the CDP, you're not quite sure where you're going to end, what data you will need in the future, or what the use cases will be that come across your way. So in the beginning, we were mainly focusing on the website data that we had, and also on the data that we were planning to connect in the near future. And then in the years following, so as I said, we're working for 5 years at STIHL now with Tealium. We were adding multiple data points, overthinking sometimes attributes that weren't used as they were thought in the beginning. And so it's an ongoing process, and it's always in movement, I would say.
Yeah. And is that everything documented already?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, as we said, we have the second track. Yeah. So I had some time to think about it again. Yeah, in the beginning, you get the documentation by Tealium, but this was never really utilized on our side. So we made the documentation clear in the tool itself. And also I'm thinking about making our own documentation that's a bit more widely available to colleagues or stakeholders in the company that maybe not directly work in the CDP to get their ideation process ongoing. But one tip I can give you with this one is to always use the notes to really describe what an attribute will store and what data is in the CDP, because it makes it way easier, even for yourself, to work with stuff that you maybe created 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah. So maybe a quick question for you guys. How many of you have got like a data dictionary implemented in your organization? By a show of hands. One. Oh my days, we've got loads of work to do. Talk to me afterwards, okay? There's going to be loads of work. Awesome. Is there any questions from the audience? Any questions? Okay, let me continue with my questions. I've got plenty. So what would be the logistics of managing those different data sources? Let's say from different teams, different subsidiaries. In, I can imagine 100 years of company. Mm-hmm. You've collected tons of data, all in different schema and all that stuff. How would you logistically approach that subject?
Yeah, first of all, you need to find the right contact partners, obviously. That can be hard sometimes because especially in big companies, one person will lead you to another. And so, don't know how many of you know Asterix and Obelix, but it's a comic, and there is this little paper, and they are running from place A to place B. So it can feel like this sometimes. But as soon as you found the right contact person, you will definitely it will definitely help you to already have a use case in hand to make clear why you really need that data and what it brings for the company to get their alignment with you and to really make them support you with the implementation. Okay. And the managing itself, at least we're in the lucky position that we have a centrally managed e-commerce rollout. So basically all the data sources are available for all the e-commerce countries. And if you're connecting one, you can also connect the others.
Mm-hmm. Have you used any AI or machine learning to differentiate between different data sources and standardize that dictionary?
Yeah, as I said, we're a Microsoft company. We have Copilot. It's not really able, I think, to help with that. Even though I know that there are many teams in our company that are already working with AI and also some of them with data, but we're not using it currently to streamline the data. Mm-hmm. It's more of creating new data, for example. Okay. What I used AI for is to get a good picture of what attributes I do need, how the naming convention could be, how the time frames of each attribute could be, especially for timelines. And this helped very much already.
And are you pulling in some of the AI models or the results of those AI models or machine learning models already into the CDP for any purpose?
So right now we don't, because we decided to implement them directly in some of the touch points they have, which made more sense at that point. But we will definitely do that in the future, yes.
Okay, perfect. Any questions? Yes, there's one question.
Can I just ask it?
Yeah, we've got a microphone, yes.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I was just wondering, we also see often CDP implementations fail at organizations. And of course, we always want a successful one. So I was wondering if you can share your biggest learning from the CDP implementation.
Well, there were a lot, and it's hard to give you the best one. But I think one of the learnings, because we made through some iterations and also of the attributes and stuff like that, is always trying to think as big as you can from the beginning on, but still start with little increments. So maybe it's hard to combine, but think of what could be the highest point you could reach, but still don't try to reach it from the beginning on. Start with small increments, implementing the website and website data, which is basically the easiest part for most companies, I guess. And then think about what would be the next most important thing to have in the CDP and to utilize the data, and then start with this one. And don't try to connect everything at the same time, because that won't work, and yeah, it will be confusing for you, for the colleagues, and I think no one will be happy at the end.
That's very valuable advice, especially during some of the workshops that we do or that we conduct with customers. We focus on this anatomy of the use case, where we break it down into those implementable chunks as opposed to one big project that is going to take 18 months. We know from all other different stories that that barely works or ever works. So we just want to focus on something that we can deliver very quickly, show the progress, show the value, and then deliver the next part of it, version 2, 3, 5, and so on. So we're going to talk about this in maybe just a second, but that's a good segue to working with your team. How did you find exactly who to talk to different teams when dealing with them?
Yeah, when implementing the CDP, you really have a central position, I'd say. You see it's in the heart of our MarTech setup. And as I said, it can be very hard to find the right contact persons, but you need to really connect to as many people as possible, especially in the data surrounding of your company. And if you don't find the right person, always you will have a manager or maybe someone you know that has been in the company for longer. And I think this is very helpful to talk to these people, ask them if they know someone you could talk to. And as I said, sometimes you're running from A to B to C to D with your little paper, but that's the way to go, and in the end, you will find the right person.
Any questions from the audience? Any more questions? Okay, so my question from me. So how do you want to maintain this momentum of that pull mentality within your teams? What would be the next steps?
Yeah, so one of the next steps will be a workshop that we have together with you, obviously, where we want to develop new use cases, talk about new data sources we need to connect. And out of that, what we are already doing is, as soon as we take a use case live and we have some data on it, and if it's successful, we have regular meetings with marketing automation stakeholders from all of the subsidiaries, and we are presenting it there. So to show them how other countries were successful with the CDP, and to make them also actively ask for it.
Okay, perfect. And the last question, unless there's any question from the audience, I don't see any hands. Okay, my last question is how, you talked about this basket abandonment use case, which is primary use case that everyone wants to implement using CDP. And you also mentioned that you had to show the value first, and it was quite easy to measure. What advice would you give in terms of that measurement, how to portray that value and sell that use case to different teams?
Yeah, actually, you only need to look at your conversion rate on the website, and I'm sure no one of you has 100% conversion rate. So you will always have abandoned carts, may it be selling some real product or some service. So this is always a good starting point. And in the end, of course, you really have to take care of the tracking of these emails or SMS or WhatsApp, whatever you will use to send out these cart abandonment mails or messages. And in the end, yeah, you will definitely see the revenue that's directly correlated to the messages, and that should always be a really good part.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you. And I think this is not the last time we're going to hear about the abandonment use case, simply because we're going to be evolving it as we progress. So hopefully it's going to be a great work. And obviously, typically for me, I'm not going to talk about data. Yes, I'm going to talk about something completely different, which relates to the data. So, which relates to a clean data, loads of data that's been collected over decades, and also how to work with other teams. So this team has recently won a Nobel Prize in medicine for finding something absolutely amazing and inspiring in terms of our own immune system, how our own immune system can attack ourselves, and how to counteract that. And that's thanks to collecting tons and tons of data over the past 20 years, identifying the root cause of it, and also how to counteract it, so the next generation AIs can actually create proper tools to counteract this. So how does this work? So the story is very simple. We've all got these T cells in our bodies that the sole purpose is to look and find all those enemies. So they go around our body, and if they find something really nasty, they're just going to start attacking it until it's killed. Yeah, this is how they fight cancer, this is how they fight all our colds and everything. But they also tend to bring their friends. They all are the brothers, and they all fight together. And when they finish with that cell, they're in such a big spirit that they want to go further and further and further. This is how the autoimmune issues happen. But what happens is that in other part of the body where there's absolutely everything safe, there's another fella that looks like them. All he does is wait for the signal. It's that little message, that little ping that comes to your phone, that he receives it, and then he becomes a defender. So it's like that good cell that needs to essentially protect us from various... I'm going to start over. No, just joking. So it becomes our friend that can protect us from all these different other cells that try to attack all the good cells. So when it sees that horde of other fellas, it just tries to talk to them and take them on its own side, or disarms them by taking their weapons away. Or if everything fails and it cannot talk to the last one, it just simply tries to fight them to death. Okay? So what's the moral of the story? That it's all about the signals that little cell gets. They have to be timed perfectly, so that cell has got enough time to respond and to convert itself into a good cell. It's also about analysis. So you have to analyze what kind of signals you have received to be able to action on it. You have to have resilience of that signal. So that signal has to absolutely get to you so you can progress with it and you can do something with it. You also have to have diversity of different signals coming, and also diversity of different actions they can take on those signals. So to talk about the timing, resilience, and diversity, we're going to have Juan Carlos from BBVA in just a second. But before that, we're going to talk about analysis and how to analyze our signals using Tealium.
All right, it's a bit same story like we've seen a few moments ago. Marcin talked about signals. It's important that signal resilience is into place. So if you collect data, that you make sure that the signals that originate from your website, that they arrive at the place of destination. So doing that in practice with Tealium, we're not going to start, let's say, cross-pollinating cells like in the body, like imagine visitor profiles infecting each other. But we want to make sure that the events that we collect on websites and on mobile apps with our state-of-the-art SDKs, that they can be translated into what we nowadays call a customer profile as a visitor profile. Of course, you can do that event per event, but what Marcin was actually getting at, using that real-time signal to label that customer or that signal that the customer leaves with you, and then using that for a certain purpose in your tech stack, that's fundamental in the process of data collection. So that is valid from the website data collection, the mobile data collection, and of course, again, this data that you ingest from your data warehouses and bringing that together. Real-time is playing a big role, of course, with getting data in destinations that offer APIs nowadays. So in the first session today, there was a question, how do you move from tag management setups to distribute data to a more like CDP setup? But in the end, you have to realize that all these destination technologies, is it a marketing automation platform? Is it a Facebook conversion API? Or is it a Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics API? They heavily invest in getting their APIs at the most scalable level. So, and that's why the data that you consolidate from all these data sources can be provided as a single data set, rather than sending all these individual events. And of course, in the old world where you were doing that with tags and pixels on your website, of course, you can still proceed with doing that for the technologies where that makes sense. But we see a shift throughout the last years that especially in the performance marketing teams, there's heavy adoption of the conversion APIs instead of the pixels and the tags on the websites. Another purpose that is not really depicted here, one of these destinations where we activate data is website personalization. So making sure that the latest state of the customer profile is always available for website personalization purposes. For those who also are product owners of digital properties, websites and mobile apps, there's nowadays also this little chatbot or an AI agent living along with that. That needs to get real-time context as well. So it's not only about like changing a banner nowadays anymore. So we're like feeding AI bots that are based upon language learning models with real-time customer context. So that's one of these other approaches where you can consider that this real-time data activation really makes sense. Aside from that, so what I already discussed in the first part is that data standardization, and with our second speaker, he's going to dive deeper into that, Juan Carlos, on how he standardizes data and evaluates data at the point of collection, and also seeing that, let's say, how that is applied in a heavy regulated industry like the finance sector. And again, I need to emphasize there the same functionalities with Tealium, let's say, the extensions that we can execute real time to evaluate data. The data, so the functions that we can execute in real time on every event before it even turns into a visitor profile. And then, of course, if this typical attribute that exists across all data sources with a different name needs to be consolidated, that you take care of that consolidation and standardization at the very beginning. Already mentioned as well, the event attributes, that's typically your data layer that comes into existing from, let's say, a digital property, but also applying that to your data warehouse, that makes it much easier to speak the same language with all your stakeholders there in terms of data usage, of course. And then turning that into visitor insights again. So we already heard a few times about badges. Marcin said like some kind of cells are labeled as defending or attackers, right, Marcin? So that's like a very similar principle like our badges are doing, which are executed based upon real-time enrichment rules, so you can label your customers based upon their behavior. And there's a lot of manual effort going into that, and of course manual thought. You need to convince people in your business like, what I'm doing here makes sense. But if you try it out, you can of course come up with some kind of new revolutionary mechanics or tactics that you first experiment with on a lower level, but then you have to convince your subsidiaries, and as Florian already mentioned, focus on the added value. If you're building a simple cart abandonment use case, or if you're trying to grow your customer loyalty base, all these signals can be used for all these different purposes. So make sure that any kind of use cases that you're thinking about where customer data plays a role, which is a lot in our industry, that you can do a lot with that data already in Tealium with transformation that we bring out of the box. As I mentioned, heavy regulated industry, that's typically what we see in the healthcare sector and the finance sector. Our next guest speaker, Giancarlo, is one of these examples that applies or that practices Tealium in this heavily regulated industry.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm Juan Carlos González. I am Martech Tech Lead at BBVA Technology. And today we are going to see real production use cases for our pipelines. I'm going to show you best practices for quality assurance with Tealium Suite. So, but first of all, I'm going to give you a bit of context about the company that I work for and also my own tech background. BBVA. BBVA is a major Spanish multinational financial service group, a bank, headquartered in Bilbao, that's in northern Spain. And I have to say that I work directly to BBVA Technology. That is a consultancy company for the BBVA group. We are the techies and the geeks for BBVA. BBVA has presence in all Latin countries and also some of the European countries as well. Tomorrow, at the main stage, my pal, Andreu Uribarri, is going to give a speech about the AI business strategy for BBVA. So please join it in case you want to know about a bit more about the company and AI strategy. So, about me. Well, I'm from Asturias, that's in northern Spain as well. But I am solely living in Barcelona for the last years, the sunny Barcelona. My main hobbies are traveling around the world and enjoying a good beer on a sunset. Who doesn't? Yeah? About my tech background. I started, well, a younger version of me started as a IT help desk in 2005. Later, I started working as web developer. I spent 10 years working as full stack developer for all kinds of companies, startups, and projects. I switched to data and analytics in 2015 as a consultant. And soon later, I joined the BBVA Tealium project. I rolled it officially at BBVA 4 years ago. And yeah, today I am a speaker on Digital Velocity event, so not too bad. Let's have a look on our MarTech journey with Tealium. Our first Tealium was Tealium IQ as tag manager that landed on BBVA Spain in 2013. We have a 2-year data layer project, huge project that changes everything. That was the first step for our data quality. On 2017, we moved from client-side to server-side with the mobile solutions with Tealium Event Stream. We have landed on several European countries like Italy, Germany, and Portugal in the last years. And our last milestone with Tealium was in 2023 when we start working with the CDP Audience Stream. And right now, I have been 10 years in this project. Let me give you some amazing facts about this relationship between Tealium and BBVA. Well, thanks to this data layer project, we have a very good foundation. Our data quality changed completely with that. And we have mastered Tealium IQ. Thanks to our template systems, we are able to deploy a new country for BBVA in just a few days. Bang, just like that. What? Switching from client-side to server-side, all the mobile solutions? Sure, give us 3 months, just like that. And also, our first CDP in just 30 days, a month. And I have to make a little break here to tell you a little story about that, because it was a pain in the ass. The title of the story will say something like, well, shit happens everywhere. Yes, indeed. It was 2023, and someone came to our MarTech team and said to us, well, guys, your DMP license is going to end on the next month. And we have decided that you are not going to continue with this provider. So, good luck. Well, remember, we are a bank. We have tons of bureaucracy. So any change like that, that was a mess. After 3 weeks of bureaucracy, looking for new providers, testing tools, signing contracts, making demos, everything, we ended up with CDP as Tealium Audience Stream. But what was the problem? That, well, for my MarTech team and I, we only have just 1 week left to setting everything up. And that was creating new attributes, stitching IDs, business rules, audience, and configuring the first connectors. And you know what? We nailed it. In just 5 working days, we get everything done. Thanks for sure to my MarTech team and also the support from Tealium. As you can see, shit happens everywhere. It doesn't matter how big the company is. But let's move on. Let's come back to our presentation for today. We're going to see quality assurance points for the 3 Tealium suite tools, Tealium IQ, Event Stream, and Audience Stream. I'm going to show you 2 POCs, 2 real cases for each tool. Shall we? Let's begin with Tealium IQ. We are going to see a normalizer and a tag killer. The data layer normalizer. Well, for our case, not all our channels, not all our geographies can upgrade the data layer to the same version at the same time. So we have different versions of the data layer. How can we handle this? Well, we implement a normalizer with JSON schema validation and compare functions inside Tealium IQ. So in case the data layer arrives to Tealium and does not match the schema, we transform it to the right version. We normalize it. This is very important to be done on a before tax scope. So after that, all the logic on Tealium will working with the normalized data layer. A tip here, you can also send to your analytics systems a watermark where this is happening. So in case you detect this data layer that does not match the schema, you can send it just a watermark, a variable to your data analytics systems to have some KPIs. Pretty powerful. About KPIs, for the last year, for 27 billion of events for BBVA Spain, 97% had perfect taxonomy. Just 3% needed to be reworked and refined. Let me tell you that without this QR point here, those percentages will be dramatically worse. Well, the vendor tag killer. This is one of my favorites. What is the challenge here? Well, to block vendor tags on 404 error pages, for example, to improve performance and also save money on license. You know what? Banks love money. So the solution is a bit tricky, but if you follow the steps, you will have it. We just create a condition based on URL or data layer to detect the 404 error pages. Then we create a JavaScript extension inside Tealium IQ with this condition, and the desired vendor tags scoped. So inside this JavaScript extension, you are going to write the code return false. If you don't know it, when Tealium finds a return false inside of an extension, it will block completely. It will stop all the logic for the scoped tags. In case you don't have any scoped tag, it will block completely. It will shut down. And yeah, then check the results. As another tip here, you can also leave your analytics tags, for example, not blocked, to send some metrics of these 404 errors and have some dashboarding and KPIs. Another KPI, almost 300,000 for error pages are not triggering vendor tags daily in BBVA, thanks to this solution. Let's move on. Let's go to the server side, the event stream. We are going to see a file import logger and a PII normalizer in real time. File import logger. What is the challenge here? Well, for sure, you are using file importing. Probably you are working with offline data or just another source with files import. So how can we be 100% sure that all the imported data has been imported properly? All the columns, or the data, all the rows, or the attributes? You cannot. For sure, you can have some error loggings, but you will not have the detail of them. So the solution here is to use functions from Tealium. These are very powerful tools from the Tealium suite. With functions here, we are able to expect and check the attributes on each row for file import. through errors on exceptions and data errors, and also log some random results as a sample. For example, you can just log 100 lines or rows from your file to have a look or what's happening there. Also, another tip here, you can filter your UDO bars inside the function, so you don't have to check all the data layer. You just need to check the bars or the variables that are on the files. Here's the code for this function, for example. Don't worry about that, because I'm going to share with you a drive at the end of the presentation with some code resources, and it will be there. So in case you want to download it and test it in your Tealium account. We found more than 400,000 errors by file due to a bug on columns naming. So there was an error on the columns naming for the file. Right now, all rows are double-checked for data values and key IDs, thanks to this solution. Let's continue. The PIA normalizing real-time stream. This is very aligned with the normalizer that we have seen for the Tealium IQ, the data layer one. What is the challenge? Well, you are probably sending PIA data, or could be, directly to your event stream pipelines. Because, for example, you don't have any Tealium IQ data source for this. Or maybe the source is another one that you don't have any control over it. The thing is that you are receiving PIA data direct on the event stream. Let's use the email for our example. You're probably getting dirty emails. How can we handle this? Well, again, with functions, we're able, in just 2 lines of code, to clean this email. We are going to trim and lowercase the email and also hash it. So after this function, all your PIA data will be normalized and ready to use on your connectors. Very powerful, just 2 lines of code. This is an initiative for zero-party data that we are going to deploy coming soon this year for BBVA. And let's continue on the CDP, Tealium audience stream. We're going to see shadow batching and also canary releases. Shadow batching, OK. The main concept is a bit tricky here. We're going to admit critical business logics, for example, a VIP batch. What should we be done here? Well, all the batches are assigned probably by business rules. So the logic for the QA here is to make a parallel batch with these conditions. That the original batch, the VIP one, is assigned, and also we have to check if one of the business rules are not matched. So in that case, the batch is fails, is wrong assigned. And you are going to say me, but Juan Carlos, when is happening this? This is really happening? Yes, for sure. This is pretty easy to happen. Because maybe someone forgot to make a remove rule for the batch. So the batch was originally assigned, but never removed, and still it's there. Also, the more people that works on the CDP, the more easy that human errors are going to be done. Then, with this sample, we are just creating an audience with all our fake batch assigned. So with this, you are able also to connect to a connector, to a webhook, or whatever, to send this to a database, or just to make an alert on your Slack channel to detect these kind of issues. Let's continue with the last one, the canary releases. What is the challenge? To make safe canary releases for new connectors. This is very aligned with your developers teams, developing also lifecycle and DevOps teams as well. The solution here is pretty simple. We just need a random number. We have to generate it maybe in Tealium IQ or other place that generates a random number from 1 to 100. Then, in audience string, you're going to generate a new audience that says, well, that a new batch, when the random number is less or equal to 10, must be assigned, and also that the original batch, for example, the VIPs, are assigned as well. So, as you can see in the sample, first we have the VIP batch assigned, and also we have the test group with the 10%. So if you are in both, you are ready to be connected on the connection, in the connector to be in the test group for the 10% of your customers. Why should we do this? Maybe you don't want to, you are going to connect a new connector and you don't want to move all your audience to the new connector. Maybe you just want a test group, a 10% of your customers to just try and test the new connector. Maybe because it's a new technology, you don't know the provider or so on. So very powerful and very aligned with development lifecycle. That was all from the QA for today. I'm going to show you now a bit of what are we cooking for 2026 for BBVA with Tealium. We've had 3 parallel projects. Syncra project. This is a direct connection in real time from web and app navigation to Salesforce Marketing Cloud for retargeting and remarketing purposes. Also, we're working with data layer enrichment, very powerful tool from Tealium Suite. We are going to bring our CDP attributes to the client side to work with A/B testing, to enrich A/B testing in near real time, for example, with Adobe Target. And for sure, we are also working together with cross teams to generate new use cases for our CDP. As I promised, I'm going to leave you here my LinkedIn profile and also the drive with the code resource that we have discussed today. I'm going to come back to this slide later. And yeah, thank you all. Thanks for listening. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the digital velocity. And remember, without data, you are just another person with an opinion. Thank you all.
So we're going to start with the data normalizer, which is absolutely fantastic. But it runs on a lot of scripting, doesn't it?
Sure.
On a client side. Was there any objection to putting such heavy scripts on the front end?
For sure. We're a bank, so performance and security is a must. So yeah, we have to get a balance between performance and freedom. So that is where all the teams have to work together to complete the layer of security and performance, working together with us.
Yeah.
So.
And what, in terms of performance, does it impact the performance of the site, or how does that work?
Well, really not, because we have passed very strict controls of how the performance of the Tealium is impacting the channel. So we have several checks, and we try to improve it every day.
And can it be used, the same techniques, can it be used to, for instance, detect any data manipulation, or in tandem with maybe a server-side validation as well, just to prevent that, man in the middle or that bad actor appearances?
These are just some samples of how can we handle quality assurance for our data in the Tealium pipelines, but there are plenty of them. You can also have to keep in mind that the security layer has to be done from the back end to the front end or everywhere. So it has to be aligned with the standards of your company.
Yeah, never trust your own users, isn't it?
Sure.
That mentality. Perfect. Is there any questions from the audience? Yes, there's one question. Let's just wait for the mic, for the signal.
I hope I know the answer.
Yeah.
Next question.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, you showed us a lot of detection method, really interesting. Do you have any alerting methods? I think you mentioned manual checks. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yes, well, we have plenty of quality assurance points on the Tealium Suite. The most ones are on the Tealium IQ, because it's the biggest site of our Tealium Suite, maybe because most all of our control is there. So we have plenty of alerts also, and webhooks also, and connectors on the event stream. And yeah, we try just to have an eye on everything. Yeah, you have to be very, very careful, because these are very useful but very powerful tools as well. So for sure.
So speaking of the tag killer, this is absolutely fascinating how you can do two things at once. Do some good on your website, but also save on those volumes by not releasing those tags. And So can this be used in, or the insights from this actual process, are they being used and followed up in, let's say, customer service or something like that, just so they know that this page occurred and no tags were fired?
Sure. That's what the main reason that we have said that it's very important to leave our analytics tags not blocked, just to have all the KPIs, all the dashboarding, all the metrics of for errors or other sites. So after that, we send everything to our analytics system, Adobe Analytics in our case, to have all the info there and make further decisions and other actions.
Okay, and the same technique of stopping something on the client side, is it used also server side to, let's say, stop some connectors?
Yes, indeed. But the thing is that we have a similar but different approach on the server side because we have very strict business rules that control how we trigger the connectors in just a very reduced scenario. So it's very controlled, but it's the same principle here.
Okay, perfect. Any questions so far? Oh, I'm going to press with mine. Okay, let's press on with mine. On this file import logger, this is really good at stopping those inconsistencies. Sometimes we all know we can upload a file and it just has completely different format, different column names, and so on. But once you detect that, is there some other analysis later on done on those files or on those logs from those files?
Well, once you have the logs, you can use plenty tools of internal tools to analyze them or maybe make some machine learning or what's happening there and also make decisions about further steps. Yeah.
Perfect. Normalizing in real time. That's very similar to what you did with standardization before, but normalizing this in real time. Was it used already to detect some anomalies or some inconsistencies or some attacks, bearing the cyber attacks and all that stuff? Was it used in that context as well?
Well, the sample that we have seen today here for BBVA is just in testing phase, so we don't have this approach ready. But you have to keep in mind, as I said before, that the companies have to make sure that the security layer is reliable for all the tools, or for example, also for Tealium. So that was also main task for all the security layer for the company. And the backend or the front end as well.
Okay. Next question about shadow badging, unless there's any other questions from the audience. Oh, there's one question. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Functions are great indeed. You seem to be using them. They do come with limits. Do you ever run into those?
Sorry?
They do come with limits, the functions. Do you ever reach those limits, or do you have a fail-safe mechanism for that, or anything?
What? Yeah? Continue.
Anything?
Well, we just use functions for this kind of codes that we have seen today, pretty simple codes that we are not using with other tools or third-party connections, but for sure there is plenty of documentation on the Tealium website, and also you can check with the support team because there is a lot of use for these Tealium functions. And also there are several separate layers of using this. You can use it before the event is processed, after the event, and before the audience stream pipeline. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, but I meant also more the rate limits. If you ingest a lot of events, then functions might hit rate limits. I just wonder with those many events that you have, if you ever run into these.
Well, for the functions, we have always, as I said, it's just very clean and very simple actions. We are not using very complex or something like that pipelines. So, and we don't have really any more of that the things that we have seen today.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. If you're interested, obviously we've got Genius Bar, but also talk to any one of us. We can arrange some meetings with our engineers. I've worked with a number of different companies how to reduce the complexity of functions and therefore increase performance of them and reduce that time required for this. So talk to any one of us, we can arrange some meetings and we can strategize about the actual approach of how to optimize those functions for you. Okay. Awesome. Another question very quickly,
Sure.
so just checking time. Shadow badging. So it's really good at emphasizing the importance of checking whether the batch or whether the logic has been assigned, has been performed. Do you have any other, have you already detected any anomalies or anything else apart from just validating the business logic?
Okay. Well, you can also use another methodology to use this. Maybe you can use an spreadsheet and have all the rules and have like a history of all of them. And also you can check or double check with some machine learning on an AI agent that double checks the business logic for you. So you have to keep always an eye on overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the next question, this canary release, obviously this is done on the client side by creating a random number. Is there, have you ever considered a split string attribute, for instance, the server side, just to run it from the server side, maybe expose it to the client side and so on?
Yeah. In case you don't want to, or you are not able to use Tealium IQ, you also can use the split string option that is in the Tealium docs for generate this random number on the server side. So it's all made on the event string server side. So you don't need any Tealium IQ or any client side for these purposes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions from the audience? Any last questions? What will be your next steps from now on? What's the dream?
Well, the dream is the sky.
Yes, yes. But maybe immediate dreams.
Yeah. Let's see what Andrea tells us on the main stage tomorrow about that.
Yes.
The
okay.
AI and all this strategy. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So let's just do the summary of what we've talked about today. We're going to really leave some of these codes for later on. So key takeaways from today. Okay, we talked about the strategy versus logistics. It's not like one is better than the other, but strategy needs to go in tandem with logistics of what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. Push versus pull does not apply only to your teams, but also to the data ingestion, pushing the data to us or pulling the data by us from your resources as well as working with your teams. You know, pushing versus pulling. Let teams decide what they want to work with. Monitor your signals. Be very precise about what signals you ingest, what those signals look like, how those signals need to perform, what they need to achieve. And also, lastly, and not the last one, but you know, from our talk today, standardize in real time. You've got all the tools to do this all in real time, so you don't have to do the post-processing and wait for the massive amount of data. You can do it bit by bit in real time. Yes, Bart? Next one.
Yeah, thank you. Just before we allow you to leave the room, there's one more message that we want to share with you. So Tealium has launched this offer or initiative, like if there's any kind of AI initiative. And we've talked a lot about data collection nowadays, and data collection and standardizing data for making sure that we as humans understand data in different tools. That's important. But a lot of AI, I mean any kind of AI algorithm nowadays or AI model also needs to understand a clean data layer and a clean data infrastructure. So if you have any kind of AI initiative, we have this special offer, which you can also discuss with us, of course, where we offer this expertise for, let's say, a mini deployment if you want to try it out, real-time data for any kind of AI initiatives in your data warehouse, in your data cloud, or for a chatbot on your website. Just let us know, and we can always dive into deeper details.
Yeah, I want to add something. This includes use of functions for AI.
Yeah. So the functions that Giancarlos talked about, that also can be used for AI purpose. So that's like invoking your own model if there's a model living in your data warehouse and you need to fetch that with Tealium. That's one of the use cases that we can actually support there. So there are like different angles. Anything I missed, Ali, apart from? All right.
Just reach out to us if you guys have any AI use cases. We're involved and we're going to lean into it.
All right. Yeah, other than that, thanks for attending the session. It was an honor, and I would say have fun at the rest of the event.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.